Today I want to do something different. I just wanted to kind of go over some books that I have not read yet, only because I found them interesting and I think they're kind of interesting as a as a showcase of talent, as like a time capsule. From the late 90s to about 2003, Drawn and Corley used to issue these annuals. This is number 3 from 2000, number 4 from 2001, I believe, and number 5, which was the last one, from 2003. And these are just anthologies, but they're really unique. I mean, first of all, they're really expensive, I guess, for the time. They're $29.95, like 20 years ago. And they're very large. This is the size of a normal comic, just for comparison's sake. And they feature a really interesting and diverse group of creators. And I just kind of wanted to kind of share these because these are available on the internet. I got these 3 from Chris Pitzer of Ad House for $30. Thought it was a nice deal. And I just wanted to kind of, like I said, go through them and show some of the content that's inside. So annual number 3, which was published in 2000, the covers and the end papers are done by Chris Ware. And it's amazing. This is actually the table of contents. This is the indicia. This is a table of contents, but it's like in the form of a story or a comic. And this is the end papers that he does, and we'll get that to a minute. And this is 2000. This is when, just about the time that Jimmy Corrigan was published by Pantheon Press. So Ware was a known quantity, but he wasn't to the point where, like by the late 2000s, where, he besides being, just amazing what he did in the independent scene as far as regular comics, what he was doing with graphic novels. So this issue, like I said, you have the end papers by Chris Ware. I have a really interesting, diverse group of artists. And I have to say that a lot of these artists I had to Google because I'm not familiar with them, because my knowledge of international artists is really poor. Pentti Osamo is a Helsinki-based cartoonist, and he's still making comics to this day. And then you have the story by Philippe, and I apologize if I mispronounce these names, Philippe Dupuy and Charles Berberian. These are a classic cartooning duo from Paris has been making comics for now 30 years. Philippe is the writer, Charles is the artist. So you have this very long story of this French comic that is included here. Looks really nice. The art's simple, but I think it fits the story from what little I've read of it. It's interesting. And then here you have Frank Maticcio, who's an Italian cartoonist who's still making comics, and he's been a long-time cartoonist. And here you have Arsa Koryak, who is so good at just mimicking and doing homages to different styles. So this is Dostoevsky comics, Crime and Punishment, but it's a Batman parody, which I'm really looking forward to reading this. And then here you have about 10-15 pages from Seth's sketchbook. Drawings from the late 20th century. So this is work that he did probably in the late 90s. And it's all full color. It's all just one image. And it's just really nicely done. I've only read one Seth book. I read Clyde Fans, which I consider brilliant. Just a brilliant book. And if you've never read it, you should. Seth is someone whose work I have to read more of, but once I start getting down and whittling down my to read pile. Mark Lang is another cartoonist who lives in Montreal. He's still cartooning. And then here you have Michael, I apologize if I mispronounced it, Rabagliati, who's famous for his Paul books. And this is a Paul story. And then at the end, there's a one-page write-up about Frank King, the creator of Gasoline Alley. And then they include 30 pages of Sunday strips from Gasoline Alley. And it's these kind of things that aren't often reprinted, because of rights issues or whatever, or the licenses expire. It's just really fascinating that they just threw this in. And I've only gone to Gasoline Alley a little bit because Noah Van Sciver, who I follow, is a real fan of the old cartoonists. And if you read these cartoons are still good, even though they're made 70, 80 years ago, or maybe more. Claire Briggs is another cartoonist that he talks about a bit, whose work is really fun. And then at the end, you have this, I'm going to just keep it here so you can see it. This is end paper. This is an homage to Frank King by Chris Ware. And Chris Ware really mimics the style of Frank King. This is just really cool to see. And he does a Gasoline Alley style type of story. Like I said, this is really pretty interesting. I'm going to look forward to this a lot, especially reading the French cartoonist, because if things go well this summer, the family and I will actually go to Paris for a vacation. And I do plan on one day visiting comic stores or BD shops. And I don't want to be the kind of American that's like, oh, which French artist do you follow? And I say Mobius, and that's it, because everybody follows Mobius. Volume 4, which was published in 2001, it has a lot of similar type of, it's the same type of style as Volume 3, but I love how here you have all these shadowy figures, and the shadowy figures just blend perfectly with the interior of the end paper. And I'm just going to go over a few things here that caught my eye. There's a French-born cartoonist, Hankert Blitz, whose work, I really like this rough kind of almost pencil-only kind of work. I mean, I'm not saying that's what he drew with, but it looks like almost like charcoal. It's really interesting. And in this issue, like the other issue before, there's 30 pages of Gasoline Alley strips, which is really cool from the Sunday editions. Which, again, it's pretty interesting that they included this, and just kind of fun to have to read. And then here you have Miriam Catin, who's a American artist who was born in Hungary, and it's a story. She's still making comics to this day, which I find interesting. And this is about the 1956 Russian invasion to Hungary. Again, this was $24.95, but it's about 160 pages, so it is a lot of comics. And it's just really interesting here. This is the last of the annuals that Drawn and Quarterly did in this format. This is from 2003. And the cover is Dupuis and Berberian, the French duo that I mentioned in Volume 3 from 2000. And some of the things that kind of stuck out in my head were, one, there's another Dupuis and Berberian story here, long form story, which I'm looking forward to reading, excuse me. And then here you have a translated story by Yoshihiro Tatsumi. And the story is called Kept. And this is about 3 years before Drawn and Quarterly started publishing his collections, the first of which was The Pushman. I love Tatsumi. Tatsumi is one of my favorite mangaka. I love all of his work. I'm a little bit of a nerd when it comes to completist work. There's one or two items that he has translated in English that I don't have yet. But just to kind of go further, I don't know if this was like a trial balloon to see if he'd be happy with it, or if they decided to publish one and see what kind of feedback they got. But this is a story translated in this large format. And the interesting thing here is that the lettering is done by Adrian Tomina. Now, Adrian Tomina cites Tatsumi as a major influence, and he was really instrumental in getting Drawn and Quarterly to work with Tatsumi to get those subsequent 6 or 7 volumes published. So I just find it funny that Tomina, who in 2003 is a rising independent cartoonist, has done a lot of work, is like, okay, I'll letter it. I just want it done. I'm going to do it. Here you have another story by Michael Rabagliati for another Paul story. And here you have another Arthur Koryak story, Crypt of Bronte, which is that old EC style, which I'm going to really enjoy reading this. Okay, this is Rutu Modan. Rutu Modan is an Israeli-based cartoonist, and she actually came out with a book late last year called Tunnels. So she's still an active cartoonist. I haven't read this yet or read Tunnels, but Tunnels is a book that is kind of on my radar to pick up later on this year. And then here, they do this long feature on a Quebec cartoonist named Albert Chatier. And it's kind of interesting because, well, I mean, John Corley is based in Canada. And so they just did this long retrospective. And it's just to note, Chatier passed away in 2004. So this was done within a year of his passing. And it's just a really interesting retrospective about him with a lot of reproductions of original art. And then after that, they do this whole section of these magazine covers they did. And it's funny because this is from the late 50s, early 60s. And yeah, the styles have changed. Not that much if you look back at it. And instead of being indoors with air conditioning, you know, they're outside trying to beat the heat. But this is, if you're a parent, you've been this where you're dying of heat and your kids are like just fine. And there's these other wonderful full page type of illustrations, and some are just funny, and some of them have a little bit more social. Like this guy is supposed to be on a romantic boat ride, canoe ride with his partner, and he's listening to a baseball game. He's about to knock the radio into the water, and he's got this thing that says baseball. So you can tell instead of like being alone and paying attention to his partner on this moonlit canoe ride, he's listening to a baseball game. Here, this one is kind of interesting because this is a charity ball, and everybody's dressed really well, and everybody's very, you know, dressed in tuxedos, and women are wearing really elegant dresses. And then you have these two vagrants who are here just asking for money. So they're spending all this money and doing this charity ball, but the guys that actually could benefit from the charity are here still having to beg. So I just thought that was really pretty interesting. As I said, these books probably range between $10 and $15. I'm looking for the first and second volume. I believe the second volume has a David Mazzucchelli story. So, and I just thought this is an interesting time capsule because there's a lot of people here who are famous, but they're famous in France and in Europe. You have the first story that's translated in English by Jordan Corley for Tatsumi. And then you have this work by Chris Ware, who just gotten his first graphic novel published. So this is just when he was about to like just really rock it into like comic stardom. So again, these are pretty interesting to find. If you find them for, you know, $10, maybe $15, and you're interested in these, I think these are really nice to pick up. They hold up well. The quality is really good. They age well. Again, some of the Gasoline Alley pages, if you're into that, you should pick this up just to have them here. It's an inexpensive way to get some of these stories. And again, I just think it's something that you don't normally see that would be interesting to pick up. That's it. Thanks.